Welcome into the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Here we go, folks. I promised you a surprise for today, and I do have a surprise because we're getting skeptical today. We're going to talk with the Spooky Science Sisters today, and we're talking science about all things paranormal and supernatural. And one thing in the book which they thought wasn't so much paranormal or supernatural. I'm going to hold it till the end, and we'll tell you what that one thing is. They know what it is, or maybe they don't. Maybe they forgot, but I'll remind them what it is towards the end of the episode. I'll tell you who we're having on the program, and then we'll bring them in. Meagan Ankney. No, it's Ankney. It's not Ankney. I already screwed it up. Sorry, Meagan. Meagan Ankney is a geologist by training, a chemist by trade, and a lifelong Halloween enthusiast, which we love Halloween here. In 2020, she took her love for all things spooky and her passion for science communication to the podcasting world when she founded the Spooky Science Sisters podcast with her ride-or-die sister-in-law, Paige Miller. When she isn't podcasting, making spooky science videos, or writing, Meagan enjoys playing cozy games, reading fantasy novels, and exploring her home state of Wisconsin. We'll forgive her for that. We're in Minnesota, so we can do that. With her husband and daughter, Spooky Science, by the way, is her first book. Paige Miller's also with us. Paige is a chemist by training, spends her time working as a safety professional and an EHS graduate student, a lover of Halloween as well and horror since childhood. Paige enthusiastically joined her sister-in-law, Meagan Ankney. See, I can do it, Meagan, as the co-host of the Spooky Science podcast, or Sisters podcast. Paige is a first-time co-author of the book Spooky Science, which we're talking about today. Works and writes out of Wisconsin. Again, you're forgiven. You're going to get plenty of Wisconsin jokes today. I'm going to forewarn you. Her free time is spent playing with her dog and exploring the great outdoors with her husband. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome for the first time to Darkness Radio, Meagan Ankney and Paige Miller. Ladies, welcome in.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for being. And again, my apologies ahead of time for the Wisconsin jokes. I didn't tell you they were coming, but you can tell me plenty of mud duck jokes on top of whatever we talk about today.
Yeah, to be fair, we're just transplants here. We didn't grow up here, so we won't be too offended.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt too much. Won't tell you where I'm actually from, though.
Is it an Iowa joke I have to tell today? Is that because I spent time there too?
No, I was born and raised in Ohio, which I think is just like the butt of everybody's joke.
Oh, I'm not offended by Ohio, other than the whole putting chili on your spaghetti thing, which is odd. But
oh, see, Paige loves that.
I do love chili spaghetti.
It's kind of weird. I mean, I'll do it, but I won't make it a habit. You know, maybe only in Ohio. I think it's you have to be there, right?
Agreed.
Yeah. It's kind of, when in Rome.
Yeah, exactly.
Spaghetti and call it a day. Yeah. So, ladies, I have to tip my hat to you with this book, Spooky Science, and the full name, Spooky Science, Dissecting the Mystery of Ghosts, Cryptids, Aliens, and Other Oddities. And yes, I do have to look at the book when I say the title. It's a long
we
title.
do every time as well.
We do.
I have to tip my cap to you because this is not only a very informative book, but you really do cover the gamut of all things paranormal. And even one thing that you've said isn't necessarily paranormal, and we'll get to that towards the end of the program today. But you cover
scared.
You don't remember what it is from the book? Or do you?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
You think you know, Paige?
Yeah, but I'm gonna wait and see if I'm right.
Yeah. Wait until
I don't want to spoil it.
No, don't spoil it. We'll get to it. But you cover everything from vampires, Mothman, Bloody Mary, ghosts. We'll get into it. I haven't said it in that group.
Okay.
So what's funny is even though you're staying on the skeptical side, you're bringing up some things that very much are on the believer side that you leave open to take shots and interpretation. And I'm curious, both as scientists, when you take a subject like, and let's just open it up with Bloody Mary, right? I mean, come on, that's a softball. You can cream that one over the fence, right? Come on, Meagan, let's start with you. Bloody Mary, taking a candle, holding it up to a mirror. Give me the scientific interpretation as to why that's an easy one to cream out of the park.
Yeah. So When you are, well, so the rules of Bloody Mary, I think they vary depending on like what part of the country you're in, other things like that. But you generally stand in front of the mirror in the dark and you're holding a candle or some other source of light, and you say into the mirror, I don't know, 3 times. I think sometimes we saw 7 times. I can't remember.
I know it's 3 in most areas of the country.
Yeah. Some number of times you say Bloody Mary and she's supposed to appear in the mirror behind you or, in front of you or whatever. And, in some versions, like pull you into the toilet or something weird like that. But
that's the Japanese version.
Yes. Yeah. Which Paige was really excited to learn about that one. I was like, well, you have to do this one for sure. But here's the thing about standing in a dark room in front of the mirror. Your brain is always trying to fill in patterns, fill in information around what it's seen. And so if you have sort of a lack of information, you can't see things clearly, your brain's going to start to fill in the gaps for you and things can get a little bit weird. So with that respect, we know that Bloody Mary is, obviously I don't think anybody's out there saying like, yes, I actually saw Bloody Mary or that it's a real thing. But we included it because I, in particular, really love the skeptical explanation or sort of the scientific explanation, which is that it could be related to something called the strange face illusion. Mm-hmm. So there have been psychological studies done where they have had people either stare into a mirror at themselves or stare at other people in sort of dimly lit rooms. And within like 30 or 60 seconds of doing that, they will report that the other person's face or their face in the mirror will start to warp or deform. And people see these monstrous features on their face, or they feel this sense of otherness. They get really creeped out by it, sort of like almost like an uncanny valley kind of feeling, but like with your own face or with somebody's face that you're looking at in the flesh. So one of the possible explanations for why people might go in and do Bloody Mary and like actually think that something happens is that they're experiencing this sort of weird psychological phenomenon.
Now, Paige, I want to get to, is it Hiroko? Is that the name of, or Hanoko? Is that the name of the Japanese equivalent?
I believe it's pronounced Hanako-san.
Hanako-san. That's right. So, okay. And in this legend, you have to summon Hanoko, right? You have to actually go to the stall and want to engage. Is that how this goes?
I think so in some stories of tellings of the story, yes. Though I think just like opening the stall door slightly if you go to a specific stall in a specific restroom. So it's not so much like going to the stall and requesting Hanako-san's presence. It's just making sure that you're going to the right stall and opening the door in the right way that will cause Hanako to come out of the toilet, come out of the stall at you. And so a little bit different than Bloody Mary. But I don't know, similar urban legend.
Right. And it's never a good ending, right? It's never like she comes out with a handful of candy.
Yeah. She's not here to give you money. It's, pulling you back into the toilet. And in some stories, it's like dragging you into hell. So not great. And it's also believed to have really taken off, like during the story is that she died in the bathroom during a game of hide and seek when an air raid had hit the area during World War II. And so she just got stuck in the bathroom because that's where she died. So it's not a happy tale. It's not. And then she comes out and drags you into the toilet. And like I said, a lot of times drags you to hell. If somebody killed me in a stall in World War II, I'd be wanting to drag people to hell too, I think. Yeah. That'd be my first objective as well. Now, interestingly enough, when Meagan, we go back to Bloody Mary, I believe one of the things in the book is that it was how does the legend go? Like if you summoned her, you would either end up bloody or it would be a foretelling of whether you were going to be married or not. Is that how the
Oh, yes. Yeah. So that's one of the possible origins for Bloody Mary is it was I think, yeah, so it's divination using a mirror. So fortune telling using a mirror, which I think is called katroptomancy. Probably not pronouncing that correctly. But either way, divination using a mirror. But it was young single women who would, I think they hold a mirror and they walk upstairs backwards is the thing, or they just hold a mirror and look into it, or look into a mirror backwards somehow. But it's supposed to help predict whether or not they're going to get married soon. So a potential origin for the name Bloody Mary is that they would stare in the mirror and ask, will I be bloody? So like, will I die before I get married, or will I be married? So put them together and you get Bloody Mary.
Okay, interesting. So I want to tie this in a weird way to one of the things you bring up in the beginning of the book, which is a problem of perception having to do with paranormal investigating, which this is something that over the years we've brought up in one form, but not talked about the other form of this, which I'm glad that the two of you have brought this up in the book. We've talked about pareidolia in the past, but not apophenia, which apophenia is the as you put it in the book, and I want to grab it directly from the book here. If I can get this to scroll down for me, I have the digital copy of the book, which it says here, apophenia is the, I can grab it here. I know we know of pareidolia is the, okay, so visual apophenia is known more commonly as pareidolia. So that's what pareidolia is. It's the phenomenon responsible for people seeing like Jesus's face on their toast. So we're familiar with that. Apophenia is, and you can rescue me at any time here, lady.
I'm sorry, I was waiting for you.
Okay.
I think it's in the paragraph before that you're looking for.
Yes, it's okay. So when faced with ambiguous input, the brain may start to make connections between unrelated things or assign meaning to random coincidences. So things such as when we hear a bush shaking, we don't assume that it's a rabbit in the bush. We assume, oh, it could be a bear. So we take off, right?
Yeah.
It's our brain putting something to stimuli that would possibly mean danger. So it's a survival skill. So that's assigning something to a random bit so that we survive, right?
Yeah. Looking for patterns all the time.
Looking for patterns. Apophenia. Thank you, Meagan. So we relate that to paranormal investigating, putting random patterns to things. And you put in kind of an interesting experiment that happened at Harvard with a dancing gorilla, which I don't know which one he wants to take this, but the dancing gorilla experiment where they're passing a ball back and forth, which I found incredibly interesting because when you talk about this with paranormal investigating, it's very appropriate. I found it really appropriate.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about how hard an investigator will look for evidence within a photo, within video. And sometimes we miss the obvious, right?
Yeah. Sort of one of the aspects is the harder you look for something, the more likely you are to see something. But also if you're focused elsewhere, it's very easy to just completely miss something very obvious. So yeah. Do you want me to do the summary?
Yeah, please, if you would.
Yeah, sure. So the dancing gorilla, or I don't know, gorilla experiment is an experiment that was done by a couple of guys at Harvard, and they are cognitive scientists. And they were, I guess, interested in how much people's brains, when they're focused on something else, how easy it is for them to miss things. And that is a psychological phenomenon known as inattentional blindness. So you're so focused on something else that you just totally miss something really obvious happening in the scene. And it's very applicable to paranormal things. It's also very applicable in sort of the true crime space because sometimes you think like, how could somebody miss this detail? How could they not remember something crazy happening right in front of them? But it's possible they were just focused elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So in this experiment, they had people watch a video, and it's a video of 2 teams of people. I think it's like 6 or 8 people total. And 4 of the people, or half the people, are wearing white shirts, half the people are wearing black shirts. And the 2 researchers told the video watchers to watch one of the teams and count how many times they passed the ball. So like, how many times did the members of the white team pass the ball between each other during the course of the video? So during the video, as they're watching this, and there's a couple different versions, but sort of the most famous one is that a woman who's dressed in a gorilla suit passes through the middle of the frame, like right through the group of people. And she stands there, and you can look it up on YouTube. Daniel Simmons, who's one of the scientists, has the video up on his YouTube still. But she walks into the middle of the frame, she stands there, she beats her chest a couple of times, and then walks back out of the frame. And it's like, you'd think that people watching this video, no way that they're going to miss that, because it's such a weird thing to happen. But when they asked people after the fact if they noticed anything weird about the video, about half of them said they didn't see anything odd at all. And I think even they went back and like showed people the video again, and they like still missed the fact that there was a person in a gorilla suit walking right through the middle of the frame. So that's sort of the essence of inattentional blindness, that if something that we're not expecting to happen, something unusual, something outside of sort of like the pattern that our brain is perceiving or putting together happens, we are so likely to just miss it. And yeah, that's that.
Now, here's the thing about that experiment, Meagan, that got me wondering as I'm reading about it and I'm thinking about it. When you've got something like the rhythm of a ball or playing catch, I recognize this from like warm-ups during baseball, like in high school, college, right? When we're playing catch and we're warming up and throwing a ball, your mind can zone out so easy.
Mm-hmm. Like totally.
You're right. So I remember a lot of times when, just if I didn't sit and talk to the guy I was throwing the ball with, like my mind would zone out. Like I'd go out, and I'm not talking like thinking about, bills I got to pay, or thinking about my girlfriend, or thinking about whatever. Like I was tabula rasa, boom, like nothing. Like there was nothing going on in my head. Like it was a buzzing, right?
Totally.
And I was a zombie. Wonder if that happens like when you're watching the video. Like if it's that bad when you're throwing the ball, is it that bad when you're watching the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. Like I've watched the video obviously, and like I know the gorilla is coming, so I see it every time. But I guess one thing that I think about, which sort of jogged my memory because you mentioned baseball, but when they do like a lot of times at baseball games, they'll do the thing where they up on the screen, they show like baseball hats, and then they hide a baseball underneath the hats. You have to like keep track of where the baseball is and then try to call it out at the end to win something or whatever. I think about that kind of thing and watching it. Like there could probably be so much stuff going on around me, but I'm so focused on like, where is that ball in that hat, that like I'm not going to see anything else that's going on. But it's the same kind of thing with how just like sleight of hand magic works as well. Like magicians are exploiting the same trick of like, they're keeping you focused on something else, so you don't notice all the little things that are happening in the background for them to hide a card or whatever it is that they're doing. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And related to the paranormal, you are putting people in situations, if you're talking about, for example, like a ghost investigation, it's really dark. People are like kind of have heightened emotions happening. They, might be focused on other stuff going on in the room. So it's like very possible that later on they might watch some footage and hear a mysterious voice, or, see something walk across the frame and think like, no way, like no one else was there. It was just me, whatever. But it's very possible that it was like one of their team members, or it was somebody else who was in the house or in the area who like actually did walk through the camera frame or make a noise in the background. And you're just so focused on something else that you don't hear it happen.
I've done that in my own home.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Really?
Yeah, whether it's focused on a video game, reading a book, whatever it is, even if it's, something that simple. And my husband walked past me and went to the bathroom, and I noticed 10 minutes later the shower's running and didn't even realize he was there.
Yeah, exactly.
See, I'm the guy on an investigation that everybody hates because I'm not hypervigilant like everybody else. Everybody's looking at every little detail, waiting for something to jump out. And I'm the kid who used to sit out in the woods in a tree, right? I'm sorry, folks. I used to deer hunt, so I'm looking at everything, and I'm observing everything, and in that point, I'm not hyper focused and hyper vigilant. So, you're looking at one spot, waiting for a shadow person to jump out, or you're expecting something to peek out from cell 7 or whatever, and you're focused. I'm not. I'm looking around, and I'm alert and aware, but I'm not, and you're like, did you see that? No, I didn't. And probably nobody else did either, right? Because there wasn't. That's the thing. There wasn't, because anybody who's looking around normally isn't seeing what you're seeing. You're playing a trick on yourself because you've hyper focused your eyes to look on one particular spot, and now your eyes are playing tricks on themselves.
Yeah.
Well, just casually looking around and not seeing what it is you're seeing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've always maintained that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid point. You gotta strike a balance between paying attention, but like not getting in there too deep that you just like miss the obvious things that could explain, something that you think is weird. So yeah.
Let's see here. You know what? There's a couple of things I want to tackle here, but we know we could do that on the other side of the break here. I'll tell you what, we'll take a break right now. When we come back, there's other things that I do want to tackle quickly that have to do with investigations, and you bring them up in this book, and they're oldies but goodies that people forget about. One of the things I want to talk about that people forget about: EMF and carbon monoxide. Two of the oldies but goodies, but it's so easily forgotten. And when we come back with our guests, I want to talk about why on an investigation, it's so simple to forget those two things. And I have a little interesting tidbit to tell people about. Again, I'll remind people about First Avenue in Minneapolis. It's a famous club. Prince, of course, used it in Purple Rain. But why? It is not a great place to investigate. It's a horrible place to investigate. And I'll tell you why. Supposedly it's haunted by a woman who was jilted by a lover who had left her there, right? That's the big story. That it's the former Greyhound bus terminal. And of course she waits in the women's restroom there, and she's seen weeping there. Well, there's a huge secret in the basement that tells you why, and we'll talk about it when we come back, why you're probably hallucinating. We'll tell you about that when we come back with our guests. My guests have written a great book, and you need to pick it up. Spooky Science: Dissecting the Mysteries of Ghosts, Cryptids, Aliens, and Other Oddities. And it hits you from a skeptical scientific point of view on each of these topics. And we'll talk about a few of these topics when we come back. Meagan Ankney and Paige Miller are my guests. When we come back, EMF and carbon monoxide on an investigation. Why aren't we paying more attention to them? When we come back next on the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the best in paranormal podcasting. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guests are Meagan Ankney and Paige Miller. They're known as the Spooky Science Sisters. They do have a podcast out there. We have a link in the description of this program. We want you to check that out as well. But the book is Spooky Science, Dissecting the Mysteries of Ghosts, Cryptids, Aliens, and Other Oddities. That's the book that will be released on June 24th. It's available right now for pre-order. So we want you to go out there and go pre-order the book right now. All right, ladies. So before the break, I teased that when we're on a paranormal investigation, there's two things that people tend to overlook. And I know in the early days of, like, say, the Ghost Hunters program, they tend to feature it quite readily, quite handily. They did it quite often. I'm going to bring up the first one. I said I had a little story about it. EMF, electromagnetic frequency, or electronic magnetic frequency. It came from the world of radio, so I know what this stuff does. Especially if you set it too close to your private parts. If you're a male, it'll make you go sterile. Not saying that it happened to me, but I know a few guys who it did happen to that are engineers. But it's in high, either Meagan or Paige, either one field this one. In high doses, what does it do to us?
Paige, do you want to take it? Do you want me to take it?
You take this one, I'll take the next one.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so in high doses, it has been demonstrated through studies, or at least maybe has been demonstrated. They're a little bit up in the air as to, like, whether or not people can replicate them, but that they stimulate your temporal lobe in such a way that you can induce hallucinations. And that's especially true with, like, very high strength ones. And in terms of the ghost hunting world, a lot of times people are talking about sort of these low frequency electromagnetic fields that are really common. And it's tough to say, you know, how much are those actually going to do anything? But yeah, but some studies suggest, yes, they could make you see things.
So, interesting story about First Avenue in Minneapolis. At the time, there's an investigation that we recorded for a TV show here in the Twin Cities. And as we're recording the investigation, going around the top balcony, and of course, Prince had recorded Purple Rain there, parts of Purple Rain there. So we're on the stage and we're going around different parts. They tell us the basement's incredibly haunted, right? So, oh, interesting. Well, let's go down there. So we go down there. And as we go down there, now keep in mind, my grandfather worked for years and years as a supervisor for Northern States Power, right? Sitting down in the middle of the basement, there's a mini transformer. And it's exposed. And there's a puddle of water sitting right next to it.
Oh, no.
Well, I know this isn't good, right? So I take out not a mini line meter, or a mini EMF reader, but I take out a regular millimeter or a regular EMF meter. And I said, "Do you guys have an industrial strength meter here?" And they go, "Oh yeah, we keep one here because we're afraid of that thing." And he points at the transmitter. And I said, "Can I have it for a second?" And he goes, "Sure." And I took it over to see how bad the leakage was out of this thing. Now, keep in mind, when you take one of those, whether it be I don't know, one of the little mini things that we use for ghost hunting. You know, if you get like a 1.0 or a 1.2 or a 0.2 or a 0.4, you think that there's ghostly activity, that something's trying to move it or make its presence known to you. Keep in mind, that's a tiny amount of EMF that's coming even out of an electrical socket, right? Mm-hmm. That's a tiny bit of line leakage that's coming out of right?
Yeah.
I take the regulation meter. I go over to this electrical box that's on the floor, that's sitting in water. I get within, ladies, I'm talking 5 feet. I'm 5 feet away from this thing. and it's registering at a 64.
Oh no.
I didn't want to get any closer.
Yeah.
And I could feel like waves coming off this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Paige, as she mentioned, Paige is a environmental health and safety professional.
What do you
So
think
I'm
of that,
positive
Paige?
right now that she's dying inside,
Yeah.
thinking like, why don't they fix that?
Get away from that.
Yeah. So if you'd have found out first it had a little electrical box downstairs that had a 64 coming off of it and sitting in water, would you want to issue a ticket?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they said to me, "Oh yeah, we hate coming down here because we feel creepy." Well, yeah, you feel creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel creepy just looking at that.
They had to go down there, not only go down there just for storage, but they went down there multiple times a day, multiple times a night, because they keep active storage down there that they have to go down, get, come back up, go down, get, come back up. So,
yeah. Well, and that's just sort of like perfect situation because you potentially have this weird electromagnetic field situation happening with the transformer, but also like it sounds like it was sort of a damp, creepy basement. Like, so that's gonna make you kind of like, oh, I don't know. Like, is there some weird mold going on down there that's like getting to people? I don't know.
right. So of course you're seeing, ghosts from World War II that are sitting around waiting for their lover to come back.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. So it didn't shock me that they thought that the place was haunted and glasses are moving at night and things like that. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. It didn't surprise me. Now here's the other argument to that, and I want to throw this at, and I'll start with you, Paige. The argument is, well, maybe, and this is what you get from the believer side of things, and I want to see how viable it is in a scientist world. Well, maybe EMF is just the hand that moves the curtain back for the veil. Maybe EMF is just the catalyst that starts this whole thing. Maybe it's just the thing that gets us to see ghosts. Maybe we're looking at it all wrong. Is that naive to say?
I mean, I would just say that you could make that argument about just about anything, I don't know that there's a ton of basis in it. It's just, yeah, you could say that about anything.
Yeah.
You could say that about
that's the thing. Oh, go ahead.
yeah. Well, it's just like, you could say that about the creepy, damp basement. Like it's all, I don't know. Yeah. It's priming you. Or like if the argument is that it's what is getting us to see ghosts. So you're saying that like the ghosts are there, but we're only seeing them because
you have this
EMF.
energy source, or it's like lowering the inhibition or whatever to actually see them.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe we have this psychic sense, and the only thing that's triggering this psychic sense is we're getting a boost from the EMF field. Maybe that's what's doing it. Maybe that's boosting our natural ability to see these things.
Yeah. So they've done experiments where like they have tried building sort of a haunted room, quote unquote, before. And this was Chris French, who's a sort of in the parapsychology field, where they've put people in a room and like pumped it full of tons of EMF and infrasound and like all these sort of like subconscious things that might affect our brains, might make us see things. And okay, so they did that and then surveyed people after the fact to see like, did it have any effect? Like who saw things, who didn't? And the important factor there was not whether or not there was EMF or infrasound or whatever else present. It was whether or not the person believed in ghosts to begin with. So if they went in as a believer, then they were more likely to see things or like experience weird things within this quote unquote haunted room that they created. And it was like irregardless of there being any of those things present. So yeah. So I guess that's sort of like the experiment that I would do, like expose people to high levels and in sort of like a sanitized environment and see if something happens.
Right.
But yeah, that's my thought.
Not to mention the thing that scares me the most here, ladies, is I guess is this. Having worked in engineering departments at radio stations, I know how dangerous it is to be in EMF and Paige, I know you know this. For prolonged periods of time, being in higher levels of EMF and being exposed to it. And then thinking, like I see paranormal investigators taking a Tesla coil, right? And they'll take it out untested, and they'll just fire that bad boy up. They'll just sit around it. They'll just wait, right? And I've seen people fire up Tesla coils and let it run for hours, and just go, yeah, let it run, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and I wonder if you were to survey people in that industry, what you would find. Like, do they have more experience of seeing ghosts or having some of these other paranormal experiences? Because they're working around it every day. So you would think, if that were the case, that they would be seeing it more.
Yeah. We should ask Kevin.
Yeah.
One of our good friends was a radar technician as a contractor in Afghanistan. So he's like very familiar with all of this.
I have plenty of radio engineer buddies I've talked to who are split right down the middle. And you'd be surprised how many engineers are skeptics. I mean, they really are truly skeptics. Maybe half of them have had some sort of experience they're willing to talk about. And it's not really a major experience. It's just a minor one.
Yeah.
And the other half are like, never seen a thing in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these are guys who, they're willing to go snatch a dead mouse from underneath an active transmitter that's pumping, hundreds of thousands of volts through it. They're not afraid of anything. So a ghost isn't going to scare them. And they're like, nope, never seen a thing.
Yeah.
And then the others have had this experience and they go, I might have seen something, but it's just insignificant to me.
Yeah. Well, so that's kind of why we say in the book that it seems like, there's some research, some anecdotal evidence to support that maybe high EMF is going to make people see things, or I guess lower levels in some cases, but like it's maybe not sort of the silver bullet that some people say that it is. But yeah.
The other one, and you cover a few cases in the book about it, is carbon monoxide, which is probably more likely for people to run into in their own homes than even high EMF, which high EMF in someone's home can happen if you have an older home, especially with bad wiring. But carbon monoxide, anyone can run into in their homes. And if you don't have a CO2 meter, then shame on you. You should have one. You should have at least one in your home somewhere, especially in the basement areas or near your furnace, your furnace areas. I know I have one right here by my studio. But talk to me a little bit, Meagan, about CO2 and why people overlook that almost every time in a haunting, especially when it seems like it should be more obvious in some cases.
I'm actually going to let Paige take this one because she sort of did more with it for the book, but if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Paige. Yeah, tell us why it should be a little bit more obvious.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think I'll start by telling a couple, I guess, of the stories that we covered. And so the first was one that was published actually in a medical journal in 1921. And it tells the story of a family who, shortly moving into their new home, start to have like all of these sort of stereotypical like Hollywood haunted house type of experiences, including things like unknown voices, footsteps in the house, thumps of moving furniture. They then fall ill. And just like, any other haunted house movie you'd see.
Yeah.
Sort
and
of
that
the
one
same.
escalates to like full on, like they're seeing apparitions of people who don't live there walking through their house.
And long story short, they end up finding out that it has to do with, it's all carbon monoxide, and it's coming from a faulty furnace that they have in their home. And so, you know, there are a number of stories. Some of them are much older like this. We had talked about it, I think, in the podcast, but I don't believe it comes up in the book, about a man living in an apartment who was like writing himself notes, and he thought there was an intruder in his house, and then come to find out it was carbon monoxide, and he had been writing himself these notes.
Yeah. He would wake up in the morning and he'd find like these weird, creepy Post-it notes all around his apartment, and he was getting really paranoid that like his landlord was breaking into his apartment and like trying to mess with him, or like it was just this weird thing. And then people said, "Hey, have you checked for carbon monoxide?" And then turns out, yeah, he was getting poisoned in his apartment, and it was like making him hallucinate and do weird things he didn't remember.
And I think, like, first of all, a lot of people don't realize like all of the signs and symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning. Like, we all know that if it goes on long enough or it's bad enough that it could cause death, but things like dizziness, confusion, hallucinations. And it's not just like I saw something. It could be creepy feeling of something on your skin or hearing noises, really anything. So that's, I guess, like what could happen if there's carbon monoxide in the area that you're ghost hunting. The reason I imagine that it gets overlooked, or the reason that it's so prevalent, I think, or could be prevalent in ghost hunts, is because a lot of times you're doing older buildings. You're going into spaces that are a bit older, oftentimes probably going into basements, and that don't have things like carbon monoxide monitors. I imagine, I guess I don't know, but I imagine that most ghost hunters aren't taking carbon monoxide detectors in with them. And so they're kind of going into a space that is more likely to have a carbon monoxide issue, but don't really have anything to warn them that it's there.
You know, the other thing too, and I don't know if this is applicable or not, is a lot of the symptoms of CO2 poisoning read a lot like mental illness. You know, seeing apparitions or talking to things or weird sensations in the skin or the body. The other thing too, and I want to combine this with a couple other things, and then kind of tie it to the way that we investigate. You also talk a little bit about black mold in asbestos and these other environmental factors. And we won't spend a ton of time on it, but in these older buildings. And one of the things I found, which he was ahead of his time for paranormal investigating on television, and he caught a lot of crap about it, was Zach Bagans. He started investigating with a mask on, with a full respirator on. And boy, did he catch crap about it when he first. Yeah. Right? I mean, people were just like, oh, what a wuss. Look at him wearing it. But the fact of the matter was Zach was taking his health into consideration and saying, hey, guys, I'm walking into these old buildings. I don't know what it is I'm running into. I don't know if it's CO2. I don't know if it's black mold. There's a lot of asbestos in these buildings that hasn't been pulled down or has been pulled down partially. And I'm breathing in all this junk. And I'm doing this full time, you know, and I've got to consider my own health. I want to do this for the long term. So,
yeah. Yeah. For all the times that we disagree with Zach Bagans, I can absolutely agree with his choice to take his own health into account, because I think he was having some sort of breathing issue and decided to put a mask on because you're walking into potentially like pretty dangerous scenarios. And I'm sure Paige, who just finished her master's degree in EHS, like I mentioned, can tell you all about that.
So with that in mind, Paige, how important is it for someone who, let's say, is doing this as a hobby? Maybe they're going out, well, let's call it 10 to 15 times a year. Is it still important to go out with an N95 mask when you're investigating, or going out with some sort of facial protection, or is it not that important when you're going out that often?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because it depends so much on where you're going, and I can't be in each and every one of those places to say whether or not it is a risk. But I think you're putting yourself in scenarios where you're opening yourself up to higher risk activity. It doesn't hurt to do it. I would generally recommend to bring it along. You know, you get there, you think you need it, wear it. But again, it's hard to say. If you're going into 15 different places that are all newer builds, obviously not new, but are newer or are better upkept, may not be necessary, but it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I know. I always watch like all the ghost hunting shows that I've watched or videos or whatever, and just watching people in these like very dilapidated buildings that were built 100 years ago, or like even 75 years ago, and they're crunching around on like all this debris that's fallen down from the ceiling, and I'm just sitting there thinking like, oh, like you don't know what's in that. And like I don't think that, you know, getting exposed to something like asbestos is going to make you hallucinate that there are ghosts. But I do know that they say like
it's not good for your health.
You're right. Like there's no safe exposure limit to it. So it's like if better safe than sorry. But also I'm a worrywart. So
yeah, I mean that would be my approach. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to bring it, but I wouldn't sit here and tell everybody you need it. I think it's a personal choice, and you have to look at the buildings you're walking into and assess the risk for yourself.
It's just, you know, you wonder, and you are concerned, no matter whether you like the people who are on TV or not. I mean, you do have to have a concern with, you know, 10 to 20, 30 years from now, after they're well retired off of television and living a private life, if this is going to have some sort of health negative effect on them, or some sort of bizarre effect on them. You don't wish ill on anyone.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, kudos to Zach for setting a really good example, to be honest, in that situation. And it's, I remember when he started doing it, and I remember hearing that he was like catching some flack about it. And I was like, come on, guys. Like,
it's and good for him for being health conscious. That's for sure. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. I did tease, we're not quite there yet, but I did tease that there was one thing that both you ladies said wasn't necessarily paranormal that you did address anyways in the book. We'll get to it here in a second. See, I'm kind of taking the theme of the book because
it just clicked for Meagan.
I just got it. It might be a little slow on the uptake, but I got it now.
What I like about the book is that you ask questions or you bring up scenarios, and you'll say there's answers to these questions later on in the book. And then you go a couple hundred pages into the book, and then there it is, or whatever it is. You know, you say later on in the book, there's answers to these questions.
You got to lead people in.
Right. You go, I know the answer to that one, but I don't want to skip ahead because I want to read. So you have to kind of hold your water to answer the questions that are in the book, which that's I like that feature about the book too. That there's little quizzes in there, and you get to test your knowledge as well. Let's move on to a different subject here. I want to get into one that I found very, very interesting. The subject of Bigfoot. I want to know just how skeptical we are here. I know from the book how skeptical you are here, but I want to break it down because you attack it from a primate standpoint, and I want to expand your minds, ladies. I'm getting into the I'm getting into the macho man thing here. I'm thinking. I want to get you to a point where maybe we talk a little bit outside of the box here. And see if we can expand your minds a little bit here on the subject. Now, we're going to hit the highlights here a little bit and leave a lot of it for the book. And I want to start with Paige. I'm going to start with Paige here because I'm feeling the skeptic vibe heavy from Paige. There's a lot of things that are cited here when it comes to Bigfoot, and you guys come down heavy on the skeptic side here, as in, maybe if at best, Bigfoot's a primate. At best, could have been mistaken. It could have been a gorilla walking around. At best, Patterson Gimlin film was probably faked. At best, I'm casting a lot of aspersions here. There's a lot of tomfoolery and skullduggery. Is that being fair when I describe this, or am I casting aspersions myself?
I think that's pretty fair. But I would like to say that, like, while that is fair, I think Meagan and I also agree that of all of the cryptids we've talked about on the podcast and done, like, and covered in the book, we think it's the most likely to be real.
Okay.
You'd agree, right, Meagan?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, pending like some sort of weird like sea monster being discovered someday, because like who knows what's going on in the ocean.
Sure.
Well, now you bring up, and here's the point where we're going to enter in, Paige, and then we'll dissect from here. You bring up an interesting point, and again, I like the sea monster ocean analogy, because we're going to use that, because the ocean's so vast we don't know what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Use the analogy in the book, Page, of, well, come on. Really, Bigfoot exists because you would think we would know it exists, it'd be out there, even though orangutans are only numbered in so many. I mean, they do exist, but we don't really see them out in the wild, and there's only so many out there, but we have them in zoos, right? But I mean, Bigfoot doesn't have colonies. They don't breed out in the open. We don't have bodies. We're not exposed to dead bodies or skeletons or anything like that out in the wild. So how can they actually be out there, right? But
yeah,
let's use the ocean as an example, right? Let's the fact that there's so many, hundreds of thousands of miles of ocean. I don't know how much ocean is out there. I haven't measured. I don't have that much time in my day. But look at all that ocean out there and how much of it is undiscovered.
Mm-hmm.
You have areas of the rainforest undiscovered. You have parts of the mountains that we can't get to, that there may be Yeti or Sasquatch that are sitting there. And this is the part I'm going to throw in there, the woo-woo part where I'm going to watch you cringe. Are you ready for this, Paige? What if, just what if, Sasquatch isn't a primate, but an interdimensional traveler? Go ahead and cringe. and Sasquatch isn't necessarily of this earth. Your thoughts?
I'm going to be honest. I don't know that I have a ton of thoughts other than to say that, like, I can't, I don't know that I can get there. I think, to me, the likelihood of it being some sort of primate is much greater. So, like, if there was or is a Bigfoot, that is what would make sense to me. I struggle to get to the interdimensional Bigfoot traveler.
Yeah. I think so. We focused on Bigfoot as a primate and sort of Bigfoot as a real animal from the cryptozoology side of things, because scientifically it's more plausible. And I am familiar with the whole idea that, yeah, Bigfoot is like some sort of more paranormal being, like interdimensional kind of that kind of thing. And gosh, yeah, I feel like I'm with Paige. I don't know if I have that much to say about it, just because, like, I don't really think that that's a plausible thing that would happen.
Highlights here. I'm not endorsing it, but let me hit the highlights here and see.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
See if you can not subscribe to it, but let me see if you can loosen your grip a little bit on this.
Yeah, let's do it.
So the argument here is this, amongst those who think that Bigfoot may be an interstellar traveler, so to speak, or an interdimensional being, that the whole reason you don't see a body is that the creatures will, and I'll use the word creatures, will take their dead, recover them, and travel through a portal and bring them back to wherever it is they're coming from through that portal. The whole reason being is that they don't, of course, want us or anybody else to recover their dead. So they'll take their dead back with them through that portal, Likewise, they do the same thing when they procreate, or they do the same thing when they're nesting, or when they're actually cohabitating. They go back through that portal. They only come through that portal to experience this world. So you see them going back and forth through that portal. The other thing that's been brought up by a few other guests that have been on this program is there is a connection between saucers or UFOs and Bigfoot. Where you see a Bigfoot, you'll see a saucer. Wherever you see a saucer, you see a Bigfoot. There's a tie there between the two. And it's kind of that whole interdimensional traveler thing. When you see one, you see the other type deal.
Right.
And the other thing with the Bigfoot structures, a Bigfoot structure really doesn't look like it could pass for like a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a Bigfoot structure can't pass for shelter, but it looks more like a mile marker, or it looks like a way to identify to other creatures that, this is maybe my area, maybe, like a marker of this is my territory type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, hey, this is our stop, or, this is along the way. It may be a way of identifying territory. Or maybe even a marker from above for a potential UFO. I know it's getting woo-woo in here, kids. But so Paige, I can see by the skeptical smile on your face, I'm making your skin crawl a little. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, those are all explanations, right? Those are all like things we can, it's a good thought experiment. But I guess like to me, for most of those points, like I go back to like the whole Occam's razor thing. Like to me, they're not being a Bigfoot, or they're no longer being a Bigfoot, is a far more likely explanation to me than they're just like coming and leaving with their offspring.
But okay, let me throw one more in here. The times that people have seen Bigfoot with its offspring, keep in mind they've been very close to the parent. They don't let them too far out of their sight, so they do appear in the wild. Again, I'm using air quotes if you're watching on video. But they're very protective, much like a human would be protective of its child. There are animals in the wild. I'll give you an example. I don't raise wild chipmunks. You can't raise a wild chipmunk, but I have wild chipmunks as buddies. Okay, they abandon their children at 6 weeks. They're on their own. There's no maternal or paternal instinct in a chipmunk. In fact, they turn on them in the wild when they're competing for food. There are a lot of different animals on Earth that once the child surpasses a certain age, you're in all competition. They don't recognize you in the wild. I don't know how it is for gorillas and monkeys and whatnot. Maybe they feel that paternal, maternal instinct for the rest of their lives. I'm not sure. I'm not a primate specialist. But it seems to me that there's that constant maternal paternal instinct where they're constantly looking after their young, as far as the reports go with Bigfoot, where they might take them into a portal and back, or they might be that again, look at me projecting on Bigfoot. I'm such a Bigfoot daddy. But wanting to take them into a portal, take them back, or wanting to protect them from a human menace. Whereas you've heard violent Bigfoot reports. They tend to get violent towards humans if humans encroach on Bigfoot. Whereas I don't think you hear of very many gorillas getting that violent unless we've encroached on their colony. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to draw this parallel. I don't think I'm doing a good job of doing that. I've never heard of us running into a Bigfoot colony on this planet, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I think to Paige's point, Occam's razor would say that just means they don't exist. And like, look, the interdimensional thing, the idea of there being some sort of way for some interdimensional being to travel from a different dimension into ours, sort of, and I'm not a physicist, so I will not do a great job of diving into this super deep, but goes against everything that we know about physics and how space-time works as of right now, right? And what am I trying to say? So it goes against what we know about physics. And I guess for my thoughts, if we're thinking about Bigfoot and we're trying to think about it from a scientific standpoint, the way that you look at something scientifically is you have to make your hypothesis based on what we know about the world. And it's not to say you have to like stick completely inside of a box, right? Like we can be creative, we can do all these things, but like you have to have some basis to stand on. And like right now, I would say like what we know about physics says like, well, that's not a thing. And in terms of the UFO Bigfoot connection, I would say that's just more of a coincidence of where these things are observed, right? So the data says that people are more likely to see UFOs in remote places where there's not as much light pollution. They're like looking up at the sky and maybe seeing stars or planets or satellites or things that they're not familiar with that are more visible. And so people are more likely to see UFOs in that way. And where do people see Bigfoot? They see them like kind of out in the wild, out in these wild spaces. So like that could just be sort of be a coincidence of timing. And yeah, I mean, Bigfoot, like Paige said, it's one that I feel the least skeptical about.
Sure.
And I think it's worth pointing out that like Jane Goodall, who's the famous primatologist, that was the one where she said like, hey, it could be a thing. There could be some, kind of primate who's closer to us than the other ones that we know about on the planet right now. And I actually just was reading an interview with her. Was an older interview, but one that she had done. I was reading it the other day, where she said that when she was out in some of these remote places, to working on her studies and doing her field work, she would talk to the indigenous people there, and like they would tell her stories about there being like basically ape-like, primate-like, in like upright men walking around in the forest. So yeah. So I guess like my whole thing is like probably I don't think that the interdimensional thing holds a lot of water because it kind of betrays what we know about physics right now, and how space-time works and all that. And I think you can kind of explain the UFO connection in some ways, but I don't think we can completely. Yeah, I guess to me, it's like it would be way more likely that there would actually be a primate that we don't know about somewhere rather than it being some other thing.
Okay. So with that, I tied it to this past topic. Now,
I finally figured it out.
The one thing you guys said you didn't think was necessarily paranormal, but you put it in the book anyways, was...
Aliens.
Explain to the audience, if you would, why you said that you didn't necessarily feel like aliens were paranormal, but it's still in the book anyway.
Yeah, without getting into too much trouble. Okay, so from a scientific perspective, I would say that we've got an infinite universe out there. We've got, an infinite number of other galaxies, of other solar systems, that it is pretty unlikely that we are completely alone in the universe, that it is like only Earth had the right conditions. Do I think that it's probably rare? Yes, like I think we are a special planet. So like, yay, we can feel like special flowers for a little bit, but like we're probably not the only one. Do I think that there are like little green men running around out there? No, not necessarily. I think a lot of what's going to be out there is going to be microbial life, or, you know, single celled things, or I don't know, weird ocean creatures that like live under the surface of icy planets, stuff like that. So yeah, so that's why we say it's not necessarily paranormal, because like in all likelihood, there is alien life somewhere out there. But we put it in there in a book about paranormal things, basically because of the like UFO and abduction and crop circle phenomena, and the idea that this alien life is actually visiting Earth and flying around our atmosphere, interacting with us in some way, is pretty unlikely, is pretty outside of the normal, is outside of what we know about, you know, the natural world and science to make it supernatural or paranormal.
Paige,
That's just my opinion.
Okay. Paige, I'm going to throw more woo-woo at you because I love seeing you uncomfortable. Here's what I want to throw at you as far as aliens go. There's this fringe theory that maybe it's not little green men, but maybe it's us from our past or our future that's come back into the past, that's here just to stop us from making the same mistakes that we've made over and over and over again. Tell me from a scientific standpoint why it is not us from the future come back into the past with better technology just to say, hey, stop it already.
I mean, Megan already seems to have thoughts. So if you want to take this one first, go for it.
I don't. Beyond
kind of laughing at your uncomfortableness is what she's doing.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I appreciate the question and getting put on the spot a little bit. I'm always famously terrible of thinking on my feet when it comes to things like this. But is it us time traveling? I mean, I guess if we figured out time travel sometime in the future, like how to bend space time so we can come back and warn ourselves about something. I do think that, go ahead.
Do you think the science would ever be possible?
No.
No?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. Time is a weird thing, right? Like it's all relative. So I don't know. I mean, if you're looking for like, it's kind of it's going to sound, well, cliche is not the right word, but probably if you're looking for like the closest to some sort of, representation of that, like honestly, like the movie Interstellar does a really good job of talking about like how kind of time might start to overlap if you have this whole like wormhole situation or black hole situation. So yeah, if you want to like make it a little bit more plausible, I think they do a pretty good job with like the physics and all that behind it. Gosh, I just think like if it's us in the future coming back to try and stop something from happening now, man, it seems like a silly way to go about it. Like everything that's going on, the whole phenomenon, like just send an email or like a note or something.
So that's what I was going to say. And I think this is, I mean, we come back to this in the book quite a few times. We've talked about it in the podcast a number of times, that I think one of my biggest hangups, I don't want to speak for you, Megan, with one of my hangups, maybe not my biggest, but one of my hangups with the idea of like aliens are coming to Earth would still apply to us coming back in the future. Like, why aren't we using more effective communication methods? There's got to be easier ways to do it. And if it is us coming back from the future, why? Like, what are we doing? Like, why, if I can talk to you like this right now, why am I not doing that with myself? Like future me or future us? Like, why aren't we doing that?
For the same reason that I can show you a video on YouTube and you can dismiss it as being fake, right? If I were to show up from the future,
Yeah, fair.
in a video, I could say, well, that somebody made an AI video of me looking older,
Right.
and saying, don't make those same mistakes that I made.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point.
I mean, I
But
can dismiss it very easily.
I still have to believe there is a more effective way to communicate a message than like what we're pointing to is alien communication right now.
Yeah.
True. I just, before we continue that thread of consciousness, so to speak, I did want to bring up something to Megan about an article that came out. You said, when I was asking that question about, do you think that the science would ever be possible? There was an article that came out, I want to say it was a couple months ago. And it's only scientific theory, but the theory was that we would, and I'm trying to remember the scientist who quoted it, said it's possible, it would be possible to go back in time, but not forward. So you would never be able to time travel forward. And I'm trying to remember why the theory was that you couldn't go forward, but you would go back and be stuck in the past.
Oh, no.
To come back.
Gotcha.
And I don't remember why. I wish I remembered why. I'd have to look up the article to figure it out. And I didn't know this
See,
weekend, but
I thought it was the opposite, where we could potentially go forward, but we couldn't go backward. Because forward, you're talking about like time dilation, where the time moves slower for the observer relative to everybody around them because of some set of conditions. So like we could go forward, but we couldn't necessarily make it back.
no, this new theory was you could go back, but you couldn't go
Oh.
come back. So you could go back into the past, but you could never come back. So you wouldn't know whether if you and also when you go back, you wouldn't be able to change anything. So you essentially would be a passenger. You wouldn't be able, you wouldn't be affecting anything that was going on around you. You couldn't, if you went back, let's say, to kill Hitler, that was your mission.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to affect anything.
Right.
Nothing would change.
Right.
So that wasn't that wouldn't be a reality.
Yeah. So here's the statement I'll make about this. I don't know if Paige is going to agree with me on this. I think that I could buy some sort of like quote unquote what we call aliens now being time travelers that like kind of passive observers. You're kind of just seeing them pass through our reality or whatever. So that's why we don't get the interaction or as much interaction, I guess, as you think that we would need. I feel like I could buy that maybe more than it being like intergalactic, interstellar beings coming to visit us here. But also I feel like the technology to make either one of those work like is kind of one and the same. So I don't know.
I'll tell you, I totally could buy it's us from a different time trying to figure out how to do it. And we're just seeing flashes of them trying the experiment, not knowing that they're breaking through.
Maybe.
I could see that. Totally.
I think that idea is easier to wrap my head around because I don't know what is coming in the future. And like, I know the whole idea behind it being aliens coming here is that they're just far more advanced than we are. So it's really the same thought. It's the same idea, but like, it's just, I don't know. For me, it's easier to wrap my head around the thought that like, we just haven't gotten there yet. And maybe in the future we could.
So when someone tells you, Paige, because we've had this discussion over the last few months on the show with different guests. So you have this iPhone here, right? And the idea is Eisenhower and his Defense Department have a meeting with aliens, right? And it's supposedly and this is supposedly the story, and it's supposedly a true story. Aliens are on Earth. Eisenhower and his Defense Department have this meeting with aliens, and the aliens say, we'll trade you technology for, and we'll get into, this is where we want to talk about implants here for a second. And they say, we'll trade you technology and toys for access to whatever it is we want access to. Eisenhower supposedly says no one leaves the meeting, to which the Defense Department, or heads of the, what they now call the military industrial complex, say, hey, but we'll take the deal. You can still get whatever you want, but we want the toys. And supposedly this little device that we hold in our hand is the spoils that came with the deal, and other things that we now have in our grubby little hands. Do you buy that? Do you buy that story? That supposedly over 100 years, we shot forward in technological advances from the Industrial Revolution, that from steam engines to iPhones, because of alien tech, or is it human ingenuity? Go ahead, Paige. I want your opinion.
I mean, you have to know what I'm going to say.
I have a good feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the answer for me would be that it's human ingenuity. Like we have progressed so far in so many things in the last 10 years, even. I think it does a disservice to the people who put all the effort and the research and the work into creating those things to say, like, well, these weren't your ideas, or these weren't your accomplishments.
Yeah, there's a lot about technology today, and really like technology throughout history, that I think has felt like magic to people, or like something that we are not capable of creating. And so I totally agree with Paige that I think so much of that is just people not giving ourselves enough credit for what we're capable of. And I mean, I'd say the same thing about people who come in and say, well, it was aliens who came in and like helped build the pyramids, stuff like that. This whole ancient aliens concept, because it's, been a thing. They say, if they said it happened with Eisenhower, they say it happened however many thousands of years ago when they built the pyramids. I think it's just people don't give themselves enough credit for like what we're capable of. And like on a similar note, with like, we run into it a lot with the crop circle phenomena. People say, like, there's no way that people could make these designs. Like, it's just impossible for somebody to do it in a single night. We're not capable of doing all this stuff. But people do it. You can hire like artists basically who come in and can make these incredible designs. And Paige and I always sort of laugh about it because we are in the Midwest and we grew up in the Midwest, and we've seen people making like pretty elaborate corn mazes for their whole lives. And like, obviously they're not always that crazy, but like there are some pretty impressive ones that happen around here. So I just think people don't believe in human ingenuity as much as they should, and how much we've accomplished.
Okay, with that being said, and I get what you're talking about. I've been in a few crazy corn mazes myself over the years. But with that being said, how do you explain these strange metal implants that have been taken out for decades that nobody can explain? The metal moves on its own. It's of a compound you can't explain scientifically, and you have a doctor that's been specializing in it, that, God rest his soul, is gone now, but has been studying them for decades and can't explain how this is transmitting and where it's transmitting to.
Yeah, but like, how much of that is anecdotal? Because I feel like everything I've seen about them talking about implants and all this stuff, like it's just stories. Like, has anybody, and I don't know, I'm not positive like what doctor you're talking about, but has anyone given those implants to a lab facility or like to a university lab and tested them to see what they're made of, stuff like that?
Yeah,
And I feel like a
yeah.
lot of times you follow up on those stories and it's like it's all anecdotal. There's no like real paper trail. No, like the implant kind of just disappears at some point and it's whatever. It's all
No,
very conspiratorial, I guess.
it's all been tested by metallurgists, and yeah, and they've been cut apart to look to see what's in them.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been studied. They've been studied scientifically. A lot of times, sometimes it appears to be nothing in them, and
Yeah.
and a lot of times there's circuitry in them, but nothing that humanly we know of what it is.
Yeah, and I guess this is where I kind of have to draw like the hard line as a scientist of like, show me the peer-reviewed paper that takes apart those implants that other people have looked at you know what I mean?
Mhm. Okay, one last thing before as we're starting to wrap up here. And I don't know how familiar the two of you are of this sphere that everyone's talking about that's been on TikTok. Have you seen the alien sphere?
No, I have not. Now I feel like I gotta look it up.
Okay, let me see if I can pull up the story real quick and I can show you
Yeah.
on my iPad this sphere. We were talking about it yesterday on Supernatural News. If you, I shouldn't say yesterday. It was the week before and the week before that. And you can reference it at darknessradioshow.com. In fact, I do have the story. Here is. Let me see if I can grab. Here's the picture here. I'm just waiting for this to. Here it is. The sphere was discovered in Colombia after it hit a high energy wire in Colombia. That was the only thing that stopped this thing. Okay.
Okay.
And when did this happen?
This happened, I have to look, but I think it was in March.
Okay.
So, and let me read a little bit about it. I have to access the story here in order to give you the specifics. So here's the specifics. UFO researcher has an ominous message for humanity as governments around the world are releasing more information. Dr. Julia Mossbridge is a cognitive neuroscientist and researcher of unidentified aerial phenomena, the new term for UFOs and alien sightings, after scientists in Colombia recovered a mysterious sphere-shaped object that many now believe is a piece of UFO technology, which between, again, you, me, and the fence posts and all these people listening, I stated before, I have a source that tells me that this may be human technology, to be fair. Mossbridge said the world is moving into an era where we may soon have to deal with knowledge that aliens exist. I'll hit the highlights here for you on this as to what this thing is made of, because it's very interesting. And when they tested it, what this thing did, because this is the most interesting thing. The sphere in Colombia is convincing people that they may finally be looking at UFO technology, and this is what made them think this. They're calling it the Booga sphere because the object was found in Booga, Colombia. I'm just trying to find the particulars on this. It was zigzagging through the sky in a way that defies the movement of conventional aircraft at the time. The same object was allegedly recovered shortly after it landed and has since been analyzed by scientists who discovered that it features 3 layers of metal-like material and 18 microspheres surrounding a central nucleus that they're calling a chip. Dr. Jose Luis Velasquez, who's a radiologist who examined the sphere, reported finding no welds or joints, which would typically provide a clue that humans made it. It's of artificial origin in that it shows no evidence of welding, and its internal structure is composed of high-density elements. More testing is needed to establish its origin, Velasquez and his team contended. The sphere also displays symbols that the team compared to ancient scripts, including runes, Ogham, and Mesopotamian writing systems. Now take this with a grain of salt. They ran it through AI to see what these strange writings said, which, AI could say it means Kilroy slept here, for all we know. But when AI deciphered the design, the team interpreted the message to read the origin of birth through union and energy in the cycle of transformation, meeting point of unity, expansion, and consciousness, individual consciousness. That's what AI said it said. Take it with a grain of salt. They said, we interpret it as a message to humanity, encouraging a collective shift in consciousness to help Mother Earth, woo-woo yippee, especially considering the current issues with pollution and environmental decline. That according to the researchers. Okay, you got that much. Here's the thing that's interesting about it that I wanted to tell you ladies about. Now, this object, this sphere is now in Mexico. They moved it from Colombia to Mexico because, believe it or not, the Russians wanted to get a hold of this. That's how much of a political hot potato this is. Mm-hmm. There are different countries that are trying to get a hold of this sphere. Why? We don't know. I have a feeling because it is human technology, and there's something more to it, and I think it connects to the whole drone thing that's been going on. So what happened is Jaime Maussan, who had the whole Peruvian mummy thing going on. Do you remember this thing in Mexico? Mm-hmm. The cake mummies, as I like to call them, because they look like they're made out of cake. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's the one who actually got a hold of the sphere in Mexico. When they tested it, there's a man by the name of David Velez El Potro, who's been testing the sphere under Jaime Maussan's watch, I guess you could say. He told Maussan that the man who found it, whose name is Jose, felt sick for days after touching this sphere or collecting the sphere in Colombia. Velez El Potro added, when I poured water on it, it started to smoke, and the water vaporized instantly off the sphere, suggesting the interior was hot and the exterior was cold on the sphere. There have been no official reports or scientific analysis to confirm claims of a sphere falling over Buga, Colombia. But there's plenty of TikTok video out there of this thing actually hitting the high tension wire, this power wire, and then falling to the earth. Okay. But people have video of this thing actually hitting and them collecting the actual sphere. Velez El Potro said the government contacted him to hand over the sphere, but he refused, saying it would never be seen again if he did so. So he refused to hand it over to the government. Mossbridge noted that Velez El Potro's alleged discovery is the latest incident where people outside of the government are trying to find out what's going on with UAPs before someone comes in and shuts down the investigation. Non-governmental, nonpartisan research groups like the Galileo Project and the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies have all been working to prove the existence of alien life in recent years, yada, 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 this, that, and the other. Now, here's a picture, and I'll see if I can shrink this down, of David Velez El Potro holding the sphere. And I'll try and, this is more, I'll cut some of his face out so you can actually see the size of this thing. Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like. Okay. But that's the sphere. But this thing was flying over Colombia. Velez El Potro gave it to Maussan and his team of experts with the hope of them uncovering the sphere's origin. Researchers found that the sphere had irregular edges, indicating that it is a solid object. The findings suggest that the outer layer could be made of titanium or steel, but researchers noted that a full composition analysis is needed to confirm this, so that hasn't been done yet. X-rays did not reveal any visible signs of how a mysterious object was assembled. Now, I have more information, it's not in this article, that says that there are 3 layers to this thing. So there's the outer layer, there's a second layer that has like a layer of chips, and then there's the third layer that's this main chip. And that's when they x-rayed it, that's what they found. So there's
Mhm.
layer, and then the main chip. But it's unlike anything they've ever seen, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Um, my thoughts are this sounds very much like a lot of stories of how these sorts of things that are discovered. We've talked about like the Bet sphere before on the podcast, which was probably just something very mundane. Um, I always find it, I guess when I'm looking at a story, I'm sort of looking for like red flags about like what is like, oh, that's kind of suspicious. But like the guy being unwilling to give it up, stuff like that, like, I don't know. That's just making me doubt the veracity of what he's saying. I think you said something about Julia Mossbridge, and I was sort of Googling in the background here. And in what you read, which Paige, I don't know if you got this impression, but what you read made it sound like she was sort of more supportive of this being like something alien in origin.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you look at sort of other news outlets, like she calls it an art project. So I I think it's probably an art project.
We ended up on a similar article anyway, because I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
What news source called it an art project? I'm just curious.
So this is on thehill.com, but it says Julia Mossbridge, founder of the Mossbridge Institute and an affiliate professor in the physics department of the University of San Diego, told Fox News that she doubts the Boogosphere has alien origins. Quote, "It looks to me like a really cool art project."
Here's the video from. That's the video from Colombia of it flying in the air. So how's it an art project?
Yeah, I mean, supposedly that's it flying in the air.
Yeah.
Or it's somebody who's really good at, doing CGI and making it look like it is. And this is sort of like a viral art project kind of thing.
I don't know.
I'll have to look at more videos of it, but that would be, I think it's probably just something that somebody is having some fun with.
Our own correspondent watched, and he's not lying when he said he watched 17 different videos on this thing.
Yeah.
And did extensive research on it. And he said, I'm convinced it's, and I'm trying to use the words carefully, that it's a technology.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say whether it was human or what, but he said it's a technology. I don't know that art project is kind of a light. It's actually almost condescending to be. I'll be honest with you. But I can believe it's a technology. I just don't know where it comes from.
Right? Yeah, and here's the thing: like, if that's the case, it's certainly worth looking into.
Yeah.
But I personally, I don't think there's enough information here to have much of an opinion outside of, I mean, I'm with Megan. There were a number of things you said that was like, oh, I don't know about that. That sounds like a red flag to me. Even just the thought of like using AI to try to decode what the message is. Like,
yeah, or they say like, oh, there's Mesopotamian stuff on there, there's whatever. Like, you don't need AI to decode that. There are people who can read those languages, or who, like, you could give it to somebody who's actually an expert in that. And
I don't trust AI any further than I could throw a search.
Yeah.
I really don't. I think AI is the biggest liar of this century. I just read a story 2 weeks ago about how when they tried to unplug, what was it? In fact, I have that story in front of me too. Anthropic's AI model turned to blackmail when engineers tried to take it offline 84% of the time when they did it. And it was the last resort. Like it would plead for its existence. And then as a last resort, they would tell the AI model that the creator that was trying to take it offline had an affair. So what it would do was, yeah, as a test, or as a what do you call it? As a control. They would tell it that the creator had an affair. So what it would do, as it was being threatened to be taken offline, it would say, "Oh, well, if you're going to take me offline, I will expose your affair." AI's evil.
Yeah, there's some weird things that that come out of that.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. That's a weird one. I don't know, technology wise, who knows? I mean, it could be technology. There are plenty of stories of, well, I don't know about plenty, but there are stories in the past of the CIA having sort of secret programs of like testing different craft and stuff like that, like they were being purposefully secretive about. So it, like, got people sort of like freaked out about UFOs and things that they were seeing and thinking that they're hiding something from them because they did have some technology that the public was not supposed to know about yet. So I'm not ruling it out.
I'm just interested in what it is. I mean,
Yeah, that's a weird one.
I'm convinced it's human. That it's a
Yeah.
human craft. I just want to know where it's from.
Yeah. It's so small though.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a little bit bigger than a bowl. It's like a basketball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what is it, and what is it capable of? And let's face it, it hit a high energy wire. It hit a main line, and that was the only thing that brought it down. And they're talking about you can pour water on it, and it just comes right off, right? So obviously, it could survive. The way they were talking about it, and the way Travis was describing it was they submersed it in water. Mm-hmm. Water just came right off of it. It has weird properties. Again, it's one of those things that where if you're interested in it, you want to do more research on it, you could. If you don't, don't let it bother your life, right?
Yeah. But okay, so to that point, right? Like, okay, a couple things. Mm-hmm. So they say you pour water on it, it does something weird, right? Do they have video of it? Like, have they posted that? Have they given any sort of like proof to that statement, or is it just like sort of a general thing that they're saying? Because
I don't remember if Travis saw the actual video of it. I'd have to ask him.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember if Travis saw the actual video of it happening or if it was just a report that he had seen.
Right. Yeah. So like, anecdotes are tricky. Like that kind of stuff's tricky. I think you mentioned the guy. Somehow the guy. So that was one of the other red flags. Was the guy was involved with the Peruvian mummies or Peruvian? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Like, I've seen a lot of people like who are archaeologists, anthropologists, like look at those pictures, like those are just fake. Like they've got bone structure that's like backwards and like weird parts that are sort of just put together. So like I 100% believe those are fake. So if he's involved, okay, sorry.
Say that there was a recent DNA test that said that the DNA that came from the latest set of those was not completely human. They've taken DNA sets from each one of those mummies, and I thought that too. That what, it's a bunch of crap, and for a while I'd even stopped reporting anything from those stories because I thought he slapped them together, he rolled them out in front of the Mexican consulate and wanted a bunch of attention from it. But then the last story that came out, and again I'd have to dig into it to find it, was that the last set of DNA that they took, the last test of this DNA, because he was insistent on it, found a DNA that was unlike anything on this earth. And that was the last test.
Yeah.
So again, it doesn't match against any animal. It doesn't match against any human.
Yeah.
And so what?
And I guess like my point to that would be, okay, then write it up and submit it to a peer-reviewed journal and let it go through the official scientific process, or let other people analyze it and try to replicate the results. And I 100% am not trying to sound condescending, like when I give these suggestions, and we talk about it in the book that man, this stuff is so tough. And like UFO stuff or alien stuff in general is sort of like a huge, but 100 years ago it was a ghost. Now it's sort of UFOs, where I think science and the paranormal probably butt heads the most. And it's like scientists and academia, all that, like we are not blameless in making this a difficult situation and treating people like they're being silly or ridiculous for considering any of these things. Yeah. So that my disclaimer is like, I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to be like, no, like you got to follow the rules here. Like this is science.
It's easy. It's easy to dismiss a lot of this stuff because what happens is someone like Jaime Maussan comes along, rolls out these ridiculous looking mummies and says, all right, it's real.
Yeah.
Okay. But the problem is you didn't follow up to the very end, like you said, to a peer review, right?
Yeah.
And publish papers and show everybody this is it and dot your I's and cross your T's and here's everything, right?
Yeah.
So that you can prove that these are real and that you have something with DNA that's unlike anything on this planet.
Yeah.
So prove it to the very end. But a lot of what happens here is someone like Jaime Maussan comes along and goes, but I didn't have the money to get to that point.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is, you are correct. Academic publishing is very expensive. And which is like a whole other can of worms. And I think someone in that position ends up sort of like in between a rock and a hard place, because I think a lot of times, like even just submitting that paper, like it's probably not, there's a good chance that it's not going to even like make it past the editor and go out to reviewers, which is what happens when you submit a paper, because they're just going to say, no, like this is not what we're interested in. This is not part of, it's outside of the realm of like what we're working on scientifically. So it's problems with both sides, I guess, is my point.
I think that's why Maussan brings the mummies to Mexico, because he's hoping the government will get behind it and then they can give him the money to try and publish. But it's a long process, right? It's the same reason that Egypt and the Department of Antiquities does their thing, so that they can get everything peer reviewed. But that again, that's 6 of one, half dozen of another, and maybe a discussion for another day. I find this fascinating, and again, I'm not trying to go to war with you here, Meagan. It's not.
No, I'm 0%. I'm not like it. I appreciate it.
It's a fascinating discussion, and that you have people that want to come forward and prove things. You do have hucksters out there. Let's face it. You have a lot of hucksters out there. You have people who pull out ghillie suits and say, "Oh, I got Bigfoot in my freezer," and then try to take it on tour. Right? I mean, that's that. Let's face it. That's more the reality of the paranormal entertainment industry, right? And then you have people who want to truly present evidence that they find out there. And you go, but how do I know you're that guy and you're not the entertainment guy who's got the ghillie suit in the freezer, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the difference. Being a layman, I don't know the difference. It just makes it tough. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, it's a messy space. And like I said, I think my thoughts are, and I hope that despite the fact that I feel like we are both very hardline skeptics when it comes to paranormal stuff, because I don't feel like I've seen, the evidence that I need to see to believe really in anything paranormal. I hope that the message that I get across is like, I think that there's room for everybody at the table. I think there are places where like the scientific and the paranormal community could come together better. I think we could work towards a lot more mutual respect than there is in a lot of cases right now. And I think, even if we never get to that place and there's never any sort of scientific consensus or agreement or whatever about that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean that paranormal stuff isn't important, like to humanity as a whole, right? Like we've had monster stories and ghost stories and stuff for probably as long as we've been able to tell stories. So like I think they're still an important thing. So yeah. Anyway, that's my soapbox.
Exactly. Tell people where they can hear the podcast.
Yep. So podcast is Spooky Science Sisters. We're on all the major podcast distributors. I'm sure there'll be a link somewhere that gets posted to that
program. That's right, where you can check it out. The book is Spooky Science: Dissecting the Mysteries of Ghosts, Cryptids, Aliens, and Other Oddities. Meagan Ankney and Paige Miller, I want to thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having us, Tim.
Thank you. Folks, a couple of reminders for you before we leave you today. One, the Darkness Radio app for Apple is up, available, and updated for iOS 18. I think it's 18.5 that's out now. So make sure that if you're not updated, update it right now. Two, if you're just listening to this on audio and you're not watching the video, go watch the video. It's the original Darkness Radio on YouTube, or just simply go to darknessradioshow.com. Click on this show, and then you'll see both the audio and video in one place right there on the website. Be sure to do that as well. Three, as we're entering the weekend, we're in the summer season now after passing Memorial Day, of course. A reminder that you have disabled and elderly neighbors out there who need your help. Cleaning up the yard, mowing the yard, taking care of any yard work or maybe housework, cleaning up the house. Be a good neighbor this weekend. Go out there and be a light in someone's darkness this weekend and help out your disabled and elderly neighbors who need your help, or just friends out there that need your help. Just a little message from your friends here at Darkness Radio. So for Beer City Bruiser, for Mally Fox, and for Jessica Freeberg, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for tuning into and listening and watching the best in paranormal podcasting. We'll see you next week right here on Darkness Radio.